Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for the DEP East New York Cloudburst Hub webinar this evening. We'll get started in just a minute. We will have a Q&A session towards the end of the presentation today, so feel free to drop your questions in the chat at any time, and we'll collect them and share them with DEP and the design team during the Q&A portion. And if you are experiencing any technical issues at any point, feel free to just let us know in the chat so that our team can assist you. We will be offering live Spanish interpretation this evening for anyone who would like to use it, which can be accessed through the interpretation icon by selecting Spanish. And you can also mute the original audio to hear only the interpreter.
Traducción simultánea al español es disponible también. Si necesitas escuchar esta reunión de Zoom hoy en español, puedes seleccionar el icono de interpretación que parece un globo en la barra de herramientas de Zoom. Selecciona español en la lista de idiomas y también tienes la opción de seleccionar silenciar audio original para escuchar solo al intérprete. Y si necesitas ayuda, puedes preguntar en el chat o levantar la mano para recibir asistencia.
Great. Thank you so much, Danny. And it looks like we do have a pretty good turnout so far this evening. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Alicia from DEP to officially kick us off.
Thank you so much, Emily, and welcome everyone. I'm so excited to see such a big group here with us tonight. We're glad that you're taking time out of your evening to be with us. My name is Alicia Langdon, and I'm a project manager here at DEP. I've been managing the community engagement for Cloudburst hubs across the city. So I'm also joined by several folks from our consultant teams at HDR, KC3, and Assemblage Landscape Architects who will be co-presenting with me tonight, as well as helping with tech and the Spanish interpretation. So we also have several others from DEP on the call. So as Emily mentioned, we'll have a Q&A afterwards, and we've got the full team here to answer any questions that may come up. And if we have more questions than we can answer, we'll get back to you afterwards. But before I jump in any further, I also wanted to pass the mic to our Brooklyn Borough Commissioner, Drasana Hughes, who's with us here tonight to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I see a few familiar names on the call. Great to have you all here. And thank you to Alicia and the team for putting this together. We're very proud of our Cloudburst work at DEP, and it's all made possible by the community engagement portion of this. So thank you all for coming to the call. Looking forward to answering any questions you have at the end and hearing this update from the team.
Thanks so much, Rosanna. We can go to the next slide, the overview of tonight. So this evening, I'll be opening up with some general information on the citywide Cloudburst program. Then I'll pass to the consultant team to go into details on the proposed stormwater management practices for this hub, a summary of engagement to date and looking forward, proposed enhancements for Wyckoff Triangle and Linden Park, and then lastly, a discussion with you all on your preferences for signage within the hub. And then after this, we'll go into the general Q&A. So next slide. So stepping back for a moment, some of you may have heard DEP speak about this before, but I want to give some context on the overall Cloudburst program. So first, it's important to remember the problem this program is seeking to address, and that's increased flooding across the city from extreme rainfall. Next slide. So as temperatures rise, the air holds more water and brings more intense rainfall to this region. Our local climate has changed so much over the past few decades that in 2020, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA, reclassified New York City as a humid subtropical zone. We've seen what this looks like in storms such as Ida and Ophelia, and even in the most recent cloudburst storm on July 14th, just a few weeks ago. All of which exceeded the capacity of our sewers, which were designed for the previous climate to manage a maximum of 1.75 inches of rain per hour. So on the next slide, really getting into What is cloudburst? So we define this as a sudden and heavy downpour where a lot of rain falls in a short amount of time. So like the storms I just mentioned before, these are high intensity events that can also be very short in duration, but overwhelm the sewer's capacity. Next slide. And when we talk about flooding in the city, this can mean many things from coastal flooding, which many are familiar with from Hurricane Sandy, to groundwater flooding and system surcharging. But we really want to highlight that the Cloudburst program focuses specifically on overland flooding, which you can see highlighted in the upper left, because this program uses a particular toolkit, which I'll describe more in a moment, but it's really designed for this particular type of flooding and can be less applicable to some other types, depending on the scenario. On the next slide, we'll see the different types of flooding from that list that are showing up in the East New York hub. So these are overland flooding, system surcharging, and pooling at roadways. We'll get much more into this with the consultant team later on. But on the next slide, Cloudburst infrastructure that we're using is meant to address these issues based on three main pillars, and these are absorb, store, and transfer. So we implement a combination of gray and green infrastructure that perform these functions and are designed to manage up to 2.3 inches of rain per hour. Next slide. This gray and green toolbox is a collection of strategies that have been successfully implemented throughout the city already. So these include, but are not limited to, porous pavement, rain gardens and bioswales, and subsurface water detention. You may already be familiar with some of these in your neighborhood or other parts of the city, particularly the rain gardens many people have seen in the right of way. And the next slide, we'll look at the Cloudburst Hub network though. So what really distinguishes the Cloudburst hubs from these distributed projects that you may have already seen is that we're targeting a particular modeled flooding hotspot and putting all these tools together into a network at the neighborhood scale. So as you'll see when we get into the specifics for this hub, the hub boundary doesn't follow the neighborhood or community board district line, but is rather determined by the geographic area that's contributing stormwater flows to these target flooding hotspots. And within this boundary, we're citing as many interventions from our toolkit as we can to work together to reduce that hotspot. Next slide. And to close out my portion of the presentation, just zooming back out to the citywide scale, the East New York hub is one of 5 initial hubs that are currently in design. Other hubs include Parkchester Morris Park in the Bronx, Casina and Corona, which are 2 distinct hubs in Queens, and Brownsville, which is also in Brooklyn. So with that, I think I'll pass to Ray.
Thank you, Alicia. Hi, everyone. I'm Ray Highland. I'm the project manager with HDR and the team, and I've been leading the design for this hub, and we'll be getting into some of the details of our stormwater management practices. Next slide. So we started by asking a few key questions. Where is the flooding happening most frequently and severely? Why is it happening? And how much water actually moves through this area? So taking a closer look at this 370-acre focus area, it wasn't chosen at random. I think, as Alicia mentioned, we really selected this area based on a combination of factors, and that was through stormwater modeling, which projected the flooded areas. We reviewed local drainage and topography that showed how the water concentrates in the area. We also aligned with ongoing planned capital improvements, which allowed us to leverage the work that was already in motion. And there was a strong case for equity. This area has a high level of vulnerability to flooding, so near-term improvements can make a real difference. Next slide. So speaking on the flooding, we didn't rely on one data point to identify these problems. You can see the results shown here in blue. That's kind of the flooding areas that we identified. It really, this hub was selected on based on a mix of inputs, from 311 complaints to community feedback, and also the advanced stormwater and sewer modeling that we did. So that identified really these deep flooding areas, not just puddles, but areas where cars have to swerve around or pedestrians have to avoid and they step into traffic to avoid it. So real nuisance areas. And that's why we're targeting these places where we could manage the water in place, closer to where it falls. And the more we do that, the less pressure we put on the downstream drainage system, and the better we can actually reduce combined sewer overflows, which improve water quality in Jamaica Bay. Next slide. And so speaking about where, this water flows, it generally goes from north to south toward Jamaica Bay. But south of Wortman Avenue, there was once a tidal marsh, and history kind of still shapes how water behaves. So even without visible streams or low-lying, you can see or seeing low-lying pockets remain, slight changes in elevation shift where the water accumulates. So using that knowledge to really intercept where water overwhelms the low points or the sewer system. And we're going to do that through a layered system, which includes the green-gray approach that Alicia mentioned before. And that's, porous pavement near the curb and Linden Park and a network of catch basins to capture the runoff, hold it during major storm events. So I'll go into that next slide. So with that in context, we can, start designing how we manage the stormwater. And, this area offers a unique mix of parks, triangles, and wide streets that give us real options. In the open spaces, we can store the water underground. And in the street, we can capture water at the curb before it flows further downhill and into the catch basin and sewer system. So we're applying this layered green-gray approach to slow the water down, store it temporarily, and then send it into the system when it can handle it. Next slide. And how we do that, I mentioned this before, but just, this is where I want to talk about these precast porous concrete panels. They're installed at the curb lane. They're 2 to 4 feet wide. And each panel catches water where it lands, right at the gutter, and allows it to filter through into a stone bed below. It may look like solid pavement, but they're porous by design. Water collects below the surface and it's slowly released into the system. And just as a note, they are strong enough to park on, and even the heaviest truck can park on it. Next slide. So these panels are one of our most practical tools. You can see the detail here. This really shows how it's really integrated into the street. It replaces traditional pavement with a surface that looks familiar, but actually performs better. So it allows runoff to soak in. You can see there's a drainage cell that allows some of that water to slowly be conveyed, and also a stone bed that allows it to infiltrate through the soils when it's allowed. So we're not interfering with parking. It's something we've heard, which was essential for residents. So the solution, it's modular, it's scalable, it blends right into the streetscape, and gives us stormwater capture without disrupting everyday use. Next slide. So looking at our on-site storage, this is, Linden Park is really the centerpiece of our stormwater strategy. It's beneath the turf field. We'll install a subsurface tank that can hold over 290,000 gallons of stormwater. And, stormwater, as it enters through new catch basins along Linden Boulevard, it'll be captured, go through drainage pipes, and then it'll be stored into the field and slowly released back into the sewer network once the system can handle it. And to minimize disruption, the road work will happen at night on Linden Boulevard. We'll keep traffic moving during the day. The field and the track will be temporarily removed in the park, but it'll be fully restored with upgraded amenities once construction is done, including additional service improvements in the park, which will be covered later in the presentation. Next slide. The other on-site place we're looking at, it's adding a smaller but really strategic underground tank near Riverdale Avenue. This is at Wyckoff Triangle, and it's connected to a new catch basin and will capture 30,000 gallons of runoff from the street. Again, similarly, holding it temporarily, slowly releasing it after the storm, and helping relieve pressure during peak rain events. And I want to mention that both systems, if they fill up, they're still connected to the existing system so overflows can be safely managed. And again, this spot also includes some surface improvements, which we'll cover in the next slides. But that's it for my portion, so I'll turn it over to Emily to discuss the community outreach events.
Great. Thanks so much, Ray. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Bombeck with Kinetic Communities. So our organization has been working closely on this project on resident engagement. So this evening, I'd like to just give you a quick overview of the community engagement efforts so far and share some of the feedback that we've received from both residents and local organizations across East New York. So just as a quick recap, in the spring of last year, we met with several community-based organizations serving East New York and the surrounding neighborhoods. Over the summer, our team tabled at multiple local events to connect directly with residents and share information about the project. In October, we hosted an in-person open house to share project updates and gather more input. So we're here now for the first of 2 webinars in this update series, with the second one planned for early next year. And so we wanted to give a huge thank you to all the community members, all of the organizations who have shared their ideas and perspectives with us over this past year. Your input has been invaluable in helping the team really understand what are the community priorities and weave them into this project's vision. So it's been great to see so many of you stay engaged and continue to share your ideas and, truly shape the work that we're doing together. And through this project so far, we've connected with nearly 600 residents through community meetings, tabling events, surveys, the open house, and gathering valuable feedback throughout this process. And so at our tabling events, community members shared that what matters to them most. So this included tackling flooding and drainage issues, keeping streets and public spaces clean, improving parks and open spaces, creating more educational and youth programs, and increasing opportunities for local engagement and incentives for community members and residents. And at our October open house at the New Lots Library, we had over 50 attendees join us to share their thoughts on flooding, climate change impacts, and potential park improvements. We heard a wide range of priorities from the community at this event. So folks were asking for more seating, additional planting, improved lighting, and public art. There was also strong interest in easier park maintenance and adding more greenery. Some attendees also suggested better traffic signals and more community activities. Others noted that they wanted the plans to avoid bike racks in the area, as these take up parking spaces. And we also heard a very strong desire to partner with local groups for future engagement. Because so many people at the open house also wanted more details on the proposed upgrades to Wyckoff Triangle, we followed up with targeted tabling and flyering at that location earlier this year as well. So from that outreach, we heard lots of support for adding more trees, plantings, upgrading seating, improving sidewalk paving, incorporating public art and signage, and making the space more accessible and safe. There was some feedback on fencing as well. This was a bit mixed, with some in support of it while some others did not. And there were some specific requests to add more benches near bus stops to better serve local residents. And so overall, what we heard from the community was clear that there's strong support for improvements that enhance seating, greenery, accessibility, and safety. Residents also emphasize that Wyckoff Triangle is both a key transit hub and a valued gathering space. So upgrades should really balance function with visual appeal. Folks also stress the importance of ongoing engagement with residents, businesses, and local organizations to really ensure that the project truly meets the local needs. And so based on this feedback, the project proposes to include at Wyckoff Triangle, new benches and lean bars, improved pathways and curbs for easier access, and more plantings. And then at Linden Park, low maintenance plantings, public art and signage, and enhanced stormwater benefits. And then across both sites, adding more greenery and avoiding those bike racks where they may conflict with community use, were other two recurring priorities. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Barbara from HDR to walk us through the planned upgrades for both Wyckoff Triangle and Linden Park.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Appreciate it. So I'm Barbara with HDR, and actually Assemblage is our landscape architecture team. They're also with us to help answer questions. So definitely want to give them a shout out for their work. So we're going to start off with Wyckoff Triangle. It's the triangle at Riverdale and New Lots. If you catch the bus on New Lots, you're probably familiar with it. Smaller curved area with a little planting area, 2 trees, and a very small little bench. So green pavement kind of extends the triangle into the street, but it's that paved green area is just color seal on the existing asphalt. So hopefully that kind of rings a bell with folks about where this is in the neighborhood. So it's a really important spot. Emily noted, we saw a lot of heavy traffic here with people catching the bus, and the space isn't that welcoming or even large enough to really stand comfortably. We saw a lot of folks kind of huddling around the one bench underneath the tree. So we'll make that more inviting and livable space as you traverse the area, because it is very much a passing by kind of space. So first and foremost, there'll be one entire triangle. So the existing triangle gets completely removed. The existing trees will stay, but the triangle and the sidewalks all get removed. It will be completely new, and the triangle will actually extend fully into the whole green area that you currently see. So it'll go all the way to the tip of Riverdale and New Lots and be raised. So it'll be one continuous sidewalk area. And then in that area, the 2 tree planting areas will be improved, and we'll add in 4 new trees, 2 of which are going to be smaller flowering and 2 are more medium-sized trees. None of them will get larger than the existing tree that's there. So to give you kind of a relative size of these trees, they'll kind of match the trees that are there currently. So not huge trees, but enough to provide some shade and a little bit of ambiance while you're there. And then most importantly, because people are generally waiting for the bus here, that small little bench comes out. We'll get 2 new benches, full-size DOT benches, so you can actually fit 6 people sitting down, I think, instead of 1 or 2, and a lean bar to really help facilitate people waiting for the bus. Then additionally, we can turn to the rendering. That'll give you a better view of what this actually looked like in person. Perfect, thank you. So you can see we kind of clean up the area a little bit, and the existing trees remain. Those are the 2 you see kind of in the foreground behind the benches. That existing planting bed stays the same. And in the background, you'll see the new street trees that are getting added in. So those 4 new trees. We did hear conversations about plantings, but we also heard conversations about cleanliness and rats. So for that reason, we veered towards putting the new trees in tree pits, less space for the rats to kind of populate. That was the choice that we made to go that direction. It also opened it up for a lot of kind of better views across the triangle and more access for the ways that people traverse the triangle. So it also kind of freed up open space for you. And as we did see people pooling and congregating kind of against the tree pit, that gives you a lot more open space to wait for the bus and congregate and talk and chat. So that's Wyckoff, and then we're going to move over to Linden Park. Perfect. So as Ray mentioned, most of the activity in terms of stormwater and water management, you guys will never see. It all happens below ground. So most of the work of this site is actually below the synthetic turf and the track. All of that will get replaced just like you see it today. So you'll have a whole new synthetic turf, all new track, a new lawn jump, just like you're familiar with now. And then in addition to that, we added a few amenities just to, liven up the space where we could and take advantage of being in this area. The next slide kind of starts to go through some of those extra amenities. For some reason, it's not changed. There we go. It was delayed for me. Alrighty. So the first is we love trees. So we tried to put in a couple of new trees. There are a lot of utilities in this corridor. If you've been to the park, which I know most of you have, it's that corridor that kind of leads you from the center of the park towards the bleachers. There's a lot of utilities in this area, but we are able to put in 2 new benches and 2 new trees. So at least you have an opportunity to sit in the shade while you're watching activities on the field. And because of sight lines and other issues, like I said, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to add more to this corridor, but we did where we could. So that'll help kind of provide shade, frag cover, and also trees act as a lot of great benefits for stormwater too. They really act as umbrellas in absorbing that water. So all great benefits to add into it. And then the next slide shows the corner of Linden Boulevard in Vermont. So that entrance on the corner, that's going to get a little bit of a freshening up. It is missing a street tree. If you've ever entered from that side of the park, you can tell where one's missing. So add that tree back in to kind of remake a new statement and add that kind of balance back into the site. And then new plantings right beyond the fence to dress it up. They're going to be more low growing, so you won't have sightline issues, as well as aromatics. They're going to have a great smell. That catmint has a wonderful smell. So it's aromatic for us, but it also helps to keep rats out. They don't like the smell and the texture as much. So really thinking about we using it as people, but also what other species might also be using the spot. And then there's also benches that are added to that corner as well. So new seating gets added to that planting area. And then the next slide shows the final area that we're working in. It's right by the bleachers. So again, that kind of hallway that's through the park that runs right down the middle. We couldn't put in trees or any other greenery because we didn't want to block sight lines to the actual field. But we were able to put in a paint and game. So that color seal asphalt, it provides both kind of whimsy and a little bit of free play. But most importantly, when you do painted asphalt, it can actually cool the asphalt surface down. So it's not as blazing hot because you're not getting as much reflection back. So that was the area that we're going to do a little bit of color seal, have a little bit of fun, and hopefully cool that surface down as well. And I think that wraps up everything in terms of Linden Park. And Emily, I'll pass back to you. You do signage and talk about wrapping things up.
Great, thanks, Barbara. Yeah, so as Barbara mentioned, across all hubs, DEP is creating graphics and messaging to help share information about neighborhood infrastructure and some of these upcoming improvements. So before we get into general questions about the hub and this project overall, we did want to take some time to get some live input from all of you on some possible signage concepts. So we haven't yet gathered any specific feedback on signage just yet for the East New York Cloudburst Hub. So your thoughts today will be very valuable in shaping what you think is most useful for the community. So some of the themes for signs could highlight how local water bodies historically flowed through the neighborhood, how the stormwater management infrastructure works, or even local stories and lived experiences from community members, as well as celebrations of neighborhood history and local heroes. So these are just a few starting ideas, but we would love to hear from you. So we can go ahead, Danny, and launch the poll just to see which concepts resonate most with folks. So we do have 2 questions, with the first one asking which signage themes are you most interested in, and then the second one asking if folks have any other ideas or messages that you'd like to see included on the signage. So we'll go ahead and take a couple minutes for folks to, great, thank you. I'm seeing the poll questions now. We'll take a few minutes for people to start filling this out. And if anyone is having technical issues voting for the poll, feel free to also drop your feedback in the chat as well. All right, we still have, we'll give it maybe another 15 or 20 seconds. I still see many people voting. All right, looks like we're slowing down a little bit. Oh, still got a couple more, which is great. All right, awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. So it's looking like the most popular signage theme is the natural history and historic hydrology. And then a close second is the neighborhood stories, followed by education. Let me go ahead and share the results so everyone else can see it. And then for other ideas that folks would like to see included in the signage, we have a couple of votes that popped up here. Looks like folks want to highlight hydrology, historical aspects, believing in the area, visitors, sites, and education. Great. Thank you so much for your feedback, everyone. I really appreciate it. And if you have any other thoughts on this, feel free to drop in the chat as well. All right, so just moving along to next steps for this project. So looking ahead, the anticipated design and construction timeline for these Cloudburst projects is for the design to run through late 2025. DEP will then procure construction contracts through 2026 with the goal of starting construction by early 2027 with an estimated completion of early 2030. And as a reminder, again, the after this presentation today wraps up, there will be another update presentation in early 2026 to share progress on the planning process for the upgrades to the East New York hub. And so that concludes our presentation portion for today's webinar. If you're interested in receiving periodic updates on the East New York Cloudburst Hub, please register for the newsletter by either scanning the QR code or going to the website that's linked on this slide. We're also going to go ahead and drop this link in the chat for reference. Great, thank you so much. So this will be the place if you want to stay in the loop on project progress to get updates through that link. And with that, we will go ahead and start our Q&A portion of the meeting. So we do have quite a bit of time to answer folks' questions. I actually don't think we received any questions yet from the chat right now. So if folks would like to share any questions about the project in the chat, we can kind of open it up to the design team, or if anybody has any questions on the content that we've reviewed so far. Yes, so for the presentation as well as the recordings will be made available on the DEP Cloudburst website. They will also be shared through the newsletter. So to get it, the information as soon as possible, please feel free to go ahead and just register for those newsletter updates so that you can receive the content as soon as it's available. And I think if folks would like to come off mute and ask questions, we could do that as well.
So I see there's a question about trash cans. I can answer that. There's not a trash can currently at the Wyckoff Triangle. We can talk to Parks about including that, but at this point in time, it's not part of the design. And then the design is a design. Sorry, I can't read. Design to the area around Linden Park, or does it expand? Designated. Not sure. I don't know if you want to come off mute, Deborah, and just clarify your question. Are you just talking about work within the park itself, or are you talking about Linden Boulevard? I'm not sure.
I'm talking about, you had the park in your design that you showed, which is Linden Park, I believe.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the design for just that area and the sidewalks, or how far does it expand?
Okay,
up
gotcha.
Linden Boulevard. How far up and down Linden Boulevard does it
Perfect.
expand?
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't picturing it. So the subsurface piece of the work, so anything that's storage tanks that Ray talked about, that's specifically under Linden Park, under the synthetic turf fields. There are, to get water to those tanks, there are catch basins on Linden Boulevard. And of course, Ray, I don't have the diagram up, but it's basically the 4 blocks in front of Linden Park. I'm sorry, I can't remember the cross streets off the top of my head, but if you can picture the 4 blocks that are on either side of Linden Park, there'll be new catch basins installed. So that's how we're bringing water from Linden Boulevard into the park. But there's no greenery or other things associated. Once the work is done, you'll never even notice, what those catch basins go to. They'll just look like normal catch basins. So does that answer the question? Okay. Yeah, and Ray, I don't know if you have the cross streets handy, if you wanted to share at least the blocks that I was talking about.
Yeah, the catch basins will be between Vermont and Van Sicklen.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are the 4 streets that, really are at each edge of the park. And that'll be all located on Linden Boulevard.
Hey, Barbara, whoever has the slides, maybe you could just pull up the slides of the map of the hub. And it's Linden Boulevard, it's Wyckoff, but we've also got porous pavement on various streets, right? So maybe if you can just give a boundary of the work that we're doing.
Yeah. Blake, do you mind pulling that back up?
Yep, 1 second.
Yeah.
While Emily's pulling that up too, I can reiterate, because I don't think I made such a strong point in my intro about this, but really what we're doing with the Cloudburst projects is, like I said, we're about to see, we have that hub boundary that's really all the contributing stormwater flows to the flooding hotspots. But where we've done community engagement for those open space improvements is really just at those 2 areas where we're installing a tank underground, because we're having to do construction there anyways and do an excavation. So when we put it back in a larger scale, that's where we have the opportunity to be doing site improvements. So that's where we focused our engagement around. But like Rupesh just said, and we'll see, in addition to that, the right-of-way porous pavement will be throughout that hub boundary in the neighborhood. And those were the panels going in the parking lane that Ray talked about. So maybe that's also further clarification. I also wanted to call out while I'm talking about the 2 on-site storage areas that obviously these are parks and DOT properties. So we've been working very closely with them throughout the project, and they've been great partners on this. They're also here to answer any specific questions there too. So just wanted to call them out as well, that of course we've been coordinating across the other agencies. But yeah, you can see the boundary here. So hopefully that's helpful too.
Now, no, Emily, if we can zoom in just to the map, just so it's a little, I don't know if that's possible.
Okay.
Here we go.
There, thank you. That's
Linden
easy.
Advanced Cycling. Okay.
Yeah, so the blue lines that you're seeing, those are the precast porous panels that Ray and Alicia talked about. So I just spoke about Linden Park, but those blue lines are where the panels go into the right of way.
I have a question about the tank. So it's only able to manage runoff from those 4 blocks of Linden and no more?
That's for the tanks themselves, that's correct. It's based on the topography of Linden Boulevard itself and how we can actually site the catchment.
Yeah, just to expand on that, there are a lot of constraints to, we're pulling as much water as we can from the surrounding area to capture. And then the supplement is the precast panels, but it really depends on the gravity flow that we can get into the park itself. And we're a little bit constrained on the depth because the groundwater is high there. So there are some constraints that allow us, that limit us some of the amount of water we can bring in, but that's basically, we maximized our ability to capture and store and slowly release at that location.
But what you're able to capture is significant enough that you feel this is worthwhile.
Yes, certainly the amount of, we're managing, a large storm event, a cloudburst event. So we are also, from just a design standpoint, that almost 300,000 gallons is a significant volume that we can store within that area. So
Okay, that's great. Yeah, and I'm glad to see the porous pavement is much more widespread.
Yeah, and one of the things that was looked at was, which streets and which areas do we see the most flooding, through the modeling and through 301 complaints, and that's where the focus was as well, to reduce the flooding in those areas.
Great.
I'll say too, because maybe this didn't come entirely through and the engineers can speak to this better than I can, but the porous panels themselves also have capacity beneath them. Like in addition to taking the water off the surface, they have built-in capacity. So where you're seeing those blue lines, that there's stormwater management happening there too, even if it's not connected to the tank itself.
Yeah, and I think Emily, it's the next slide is the cut through. If you want to, we didn't spend much time. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, that shows exactly what Lucy is talking about. That blue panel is the top bit. It lets water through, and then there's actually storage underneath the panel. So if that helps visualize it versus just the surface treatment. And I was going to switch back to the chat because I saw questions about Linden, if that's okay with everybody. So Linden Park is super active. Parks has actually already asked us to avoid the summer season. So we are looking at a 9-month period of construction within the park, and we're putting onto the drawings that the contractor does need to do that in more of the winter season to leave the summer season open. So we do recognize that we want to keep that open during summer. So we close approximately 9 months, mostly during the winter. So we're trying to be November to like March, April. So. The track. Oh, good question, Deborah. I would love that track to be porous. unfortunately, because there's certain regulations about tracks and them meeting certain guide points, because that track is actually, you can't have a track meet on it. It's not porous. However, the water that flows onto the actual synthetic turf can enter the drainage cells. So anything that falls onto the track actually ends up going into the subsurface drainage. There's actually drains around the track. So the material itself isn't porous, but it gets to the ground anyway. So we have it all connected up. That's a good question. We did look into that. Go ahead. Nathan, you can just turn yourself off mute if you want to. That's the easiest. Just trying to type.
Oh, hey. Hey, good afternoon.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys can see me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, hey, so my name's Nathan Banks. I'm a park supervisor. I'm not representing the agency by any chance. I just happen to be a local community member. I've lived in the neighborhood for a long time. And I was the one who asked about the garbage cans because over the years of just being in that intersection where those three streets meet, and knowing that the buses was like a hub for also, the 3 train, the 83 bus, and the 15 bus, I asked about the garbage cans because I know the amount of traffic that comes through that area. And previously, we've had like a lot of like dumping issues in the past in that area. So I guess like strategically, I would hope that the agency would put some form of cans there. As I'm looking at the new model with all of the pavement area that you guys got, and the additional benches for seating. So that's something that is in the conversation. And also, just by question, artists in the neighborhood, the creative elements that you're bringing. How can someone like the local artists in the neighborhood maybe contribute, or how would they be able to give like an input as to what can be artistically done to kind of like be more eye pleasing to the site? And would you be interested in using like local artists from the neighborhood who are interested in working or donating their time?
I can talk about trash. I don't know, Alicia, if you can talk about public art. Okay. So the trash, we can bring back up with parks again. There's always concerns about trash and who picks it up. We can certainly bring it back up to them again. We can also bring it up with sanitation if they can put a trash can somewhere else that's close by. Because there is a short, most people are walking, so hopefully it's close enough people put in their can. So good point. We'll bring it back up to them. Unfortunately, it's not up to me. But at least, I don't know if you can talk about the art piece. That is a good question.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, Nathan. So I'll say for the Linden Park surface design that you saw with that curved line, within the park, we're working with park standard painted games. So that will remain as is. That's been approved because we need to work within those constraints. But in terms of signage, we're actually, so tonight we kind of starting the conversation with you all about what you're interested in, the themes that we discussed and the feedback that we got. But from there, with a separate team that is actually working with historic hydrologists and folks that work with artists all the time, we're going to be taking those themes and developing them into what appears on those signs. So I love that you asked that, because if you have anyone in mind, you should definitely reach out to us, put it in the chat, let us know, because we'll be following up later separately on developing the specific signage. So if you have leads, let us know, because we're going to be asking for this information.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I do know quite a few local artists, just growing up in the neighborhood, and they've actually done work with my agency, with the Parks Department, and with Brooklyn Library and the Brooklyn Museum. So I'll definitely be interested in sharing them with you guys.
That's awesome. Great. Okay. Thank you.
And then, Deborah, you're full of good questions. I love this. You ask all the smart ones. So buses and porous concrete. So Ray mentioned, that these take really heavy loading, the porous panels, because obviously, fire trucks need to drive on them. You all need to drive on them. So in terms of weight load and parking, driving, it's not an issue, but we do specifically avoid bus stops with these panels. So there will not be panels within bus stops. The bus stops actually have their own requirements with DOT. So they won't interact or cause any problems there.
Yeah, and Barbara, I just want to clarify. Yeah, we for our porous panels, we avoid bus routes. We don't put them. And then, these panels where we're installing them, it's only meant for in the parking area, not really meant for areas where you have heavy traffic. So,
yeah.
And that's where we're installing them.
Yeah. Thanks, Rupesh. Good points.
Thanks. Sorry, I should have checked the map. I see it's no blue on Linden Boulevard.
That
Thank
doesn't
you.
mean there's not bus routes over there. It's a good question.
Okay.
You're really paying attention. I love it. Anybody else? Questions? Feel free to take yourself off mute. You don't want to type.
We did also get another question that came in with registration. So this was what projects or solutions are planned for stormwater collection and disposal in the Cypress Hills area. And if there aren't any, are there any resources that this person could look into for more information about improvements in that area?
Yes, I don't know, Rupesh, or if anybody from DEP can respond to that.
I can hop in quickly about this one. So yeah, I'll drop like 2 emails in the chat. One reaches my team, one reaches the Queen's team. We are buddies in this area because a lot of these issues, just because it goes from one borough to another doesn't mean we don't collaborate. But if you have questions about infrastructure projects we're doing, like what the agency is doing as a whole, you can just shoot that our way and we'll get back to you with a list of like the active construction projects we have, of which our Cloudburst team is just a portion of the 6,000 people that work at DEP doing all kinds of upgrades across the city. So I'll drop those emails in now.
Great, thank you. We do have a few more minutes, so if any folks have any questions that they'd like to either drop in the chat or come off mute and ask, we do still have time.
Another quick one. I know you said that you would be installing those tanks under the track in Linden Park. I know that they just remodeled the playground over there at Linden Park. Will that be affected in any way?
No, absolutely. And that's actually perfect. I should have mentioned that the playgrounds, the basketball courts, all of that will stay open too. So while we're under construction, if you can imagine Linden Park, and it has kind of like that hallway down the middle of the park, kind of dividing the track from the other half of the site. It's really that hallway, if you will, and the field that got impacted. So the playground will stay open. Anything kind of south of that, the restroom would not be impacted, if that makes sense. So you will have access to some of the park continuously. So thank you for pointing that out, because I should have made mention of that. It's not the whole park that is closed down. Yeah. See, you should be hired, Deborah. You're killing over there. You're asking all the good questions.
Josanna knows I have another big project I'm working on, which isn't too far from you guys. That's why I questioned Linden Boulevard. I'm part of the Jewel Streets project.
Oh, okay, very nice.
We have another meeting on Thursday. Deborah's like my coworker at this point, so we're on top of it.
Non-paying coworker.
That's true.
I got all the good questions, so I appreciate it.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate your time and joining us on a Tuesday evening. Last call for any final questions for the team.
And last plug to sign up for our newsletter so you know when we have the next meeting and when we follow up on anything we discussed today.
Yes, we can go ahead and drop that in the chat again.
But yeah, thank you everyone so much. This has been a great conversation.
Hope everyone has a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
you.
Thank
Have a good
you.
evening. Thank you again for your
Thank
time. We
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.